Hey guys, how's it going? It's Al. Welcome to the Week 12 Lineup Builder Show, where I take a look at everything that is going on in NFL DFS for Week 12, and I will talk to my chat over on Twitch, and they're going to ask me any questions that they want. GPP questions, game strategy, game theory, lineup builder questions. What do you do in this case? What about a cash game lineup for this? Any of those sorts of things that they have. They're just going to bounce questions back off of me. And we're going to try and just answer as many questions as possible. I appreciate you guys being here for this show every other week. It's the longest form video that I do. And if you wanted to be a part of the people asking those questions, come on over to twitch.tv/Al_Smizzle. If you want to do that easier, it's just smizzle.tv/live. And then you come right over, and then I'm live 6 days a week during NFL season. You can be a part of the show. Easier for me to get to know you that way, as opposed to just, in the comments here where YouTube is a little bit more impersonal than the live chat on the live stream. So thank you guys for being here. Drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, ring the notifications bell. Let me know down below how your Thanksgiving went. Mine was fantastic. Got to spend time with my family uninterrupted. We made a ridiculously good meal. I posted it in Discord. There's a link down below if you wanted to join the Discord. And if you're a channel member, you get access to all of the sub-only channels. And that's where most of the people in the Smiz gang hang out, talk about NFL, NBA, and whatever life discussions they want. There's people there 24 hours a day for you to become a better daily fantasy player, because the more you immerse yourself in it, the better you're going to get. So let's get to the video.
He's a legend.
We are running the Smiz Gang Listener League this week, but we are lagging way behind on entries because of the Thanksgiving holiday. We knew that this was going to be a thing, so now the pressure is on, and we have got to do what we can do to fill it. Smizzle.tv/league if you wanted to get into that and fill it. $30,000 in the prize pool. Absolutely no rake. $10 and a 3 max. So I will shout out the top 10 on the recap video on the second channel on Monday when that comes out. So let's do what we can to get this filled. I know it's a short amount of time. We didn't have all week to do it because of Thanksgiving and the Thanksgiving slate that cuts up the week in half. So get on over there and let me bring in the old chat here. How you guys doing? Miracle Whip or mayo? Mayo. Can't wait for the leftover sandwich. Me too. It's my favorite part of Thanksgiving. Absolutely my favorite part of Thanksgiving. How hard is it going to be to fit Kupp and Adams in the same lineup? Well, okay, so it's interesting that you say that, because it's not quite a value tsunami, right? It's not quite a value tsunami, but there's multiple quarterbacks available under 6K, right? You got Tannehill at 6'1", Wentz at 5'8" against Tampa. You know that you typically can't run the ball against Tampa Bay. They're going to try and see if they can make that happen, but typically you're playing from behind against Tampa, and also typically Tampa Bay does not allow very much efficiency on the ground, which means that to get your running backs involved, you need to throw it to them more, and playing from behind, that leads to more pass first game scripts as well. Jimmy Garoppolo playing against Minnesota, who's very giving. Daniel Jones, if you want to buy back in on him against Philadelphia. Cam Newton against Miami. Who's the other one? Tyrod Taylor is going to be very popular this week because he's going to pop in a lot of different models because of how bad the Jets have been. The Jets are really bad against running backs, like borderline historically bad in terms of DraftKings points allowed to running backs. But over the past 4 weeks, they've also given up a ton of points through the air to opposing quarterbacks. And Tyrod Taylor, a much better option at quarterback than the Mills Mafia. 2 games this year, 19 points, 23 points, only 5.3K. So if he gets you 20 points for 5.3 and 4x is that salary, that allows you to get there. The other reason that you're going to be able to afford a lot of, let's do something silly, right? Okay, let's just show you how we can do this. A lot of running backs under 6K. AJ Dillon, 5,900. If you were happy to play AJ Dillon last week at 6,200, you should be thrilled to play AJ Dillon this week at 5,900, as even though they're playing the Rams defense, not much has changed about his role, and he should be able to get you somewhere in that, I don't know, let's say 11 to 20 point range at 5.9. Darrell Henderson Jr. on the other side of that maintains really good volume. throughout the year, 5,800. Myles Gaskin against Carolina. Jeff Wilson Jr. is still a thing this week, considering that there's no other healthy backs and going up against Minnesota. Miles Sanders at 5,100. Like, you could do this and you could do this, and then you can probably fit this and this, right? You have a defense, you're going to have to find value, but when you have a defense and a tight end, you certainly can. Loads of defenses in here. Tight ends, you can find somebody that's cheap enough to make this work, and then you just need to find a flex and a wide receiver, two pass catchers that are cheap in PPR. So can you get there? Most certainly you can get there. Is it the optimal route? I don't think so, but you can fit both of them. It's certainly possible. No 49ers running backs. I'm just putting this stuff out there, man. You don't have to play. If I mention a player on the street, you're not contractually obligated to play the guys. Is the mic a little hot? I don't know. Let me check. It is hot. Let me turn this down. There. Anytime that I do the 06, that's better. Anytime I do the 06 010 podcast, I have to turn my mic way up to go through Skype and on their board. So like then it was 2.5 days ago that I did that podcast, so I haven't turned it down. But by the way, the video for that is available on the NFL on ESPN YouTube channel. Go check that out with myself, Daniel Dopp, and Mike Clay. Or for those of you, which is pretty probably like all of you or most of you who subscribe to the 06 010 podcast, Fantasy Football Focus with Matthew Berry and the crew, it's on that feed. Did we get a top stacks video this week? No, I didn't do top stacks because, Thanksgiving was on Thursday and that's when I did it. We are going to have 5 under 5 on Saturday. I just don't have the room on the channel to publish 3 videos in 2 days. So I might do like a picture. Like I might have Headlock do like a picture and I'll post it on socials. Kind of like Matthew does with his love hate, where he puts his 5 love players and 5 hate players on Instagram. Like I'll do that and put it on YouTube and the community posts, and I'll put that on Instagram and stuff like that. You've been using my optimizer model for GPP. What's the best rule to make to get one-offs? So like I typically do it with pass catchers because pass catchers have the highest upside on DraftKings. So I'll build a rule on DK to force on Fantasy Labs that'll kind of force a wide receiver to have at least one running back, wide receiver, or tight end, because that allows for the double stacks at quarterback from the opposing team. And I'll allow one-offs at tight end and I'll allow one-offs at running back, but typically I'm tying my wide receivers to somebody from the other team. Burkhead or David Johnson against the Jets? Ew. Like, I know that that's going to be like, that could possibly be a thing. It's definitely going to show up in projection spreadsheets, but like also ew. Struggling in 3 max, you try to identify 3 game stacks and then a secondary. Should you limit your stacks to 2 games? I think having 3 different, well, I wouldn't say game stacks, but like quarterback, double stack, bring back. I would definitely do 3 different ones of those across if you're doing 3 max. And look, you're not trying. Here's the thing. You have to, if you're trying to win tournaments, if you're playing tournaments, you should be trying to win tournaments. If you're trying to win tournaments, you should never concern yourself with not finishing in the money in tournaments, because we're not trying to min cash. Right? We're not trying to do that. Your goal should be top 10. Your goal should be top 3 or top 1. And that means that you have to be willing. You've seen my recap videos and you've seen my single entry lineups where it's like, hey, this week I was in the top 5. And then also, hey, this week I finished like 160th out of 195. So sometimes you're just not going to get there, and you have to be okay with that. You just have to be okay with that. Yesterday, I played a single lineup in the $200,000 game changer on DraftKings, paid the top 27. There were 141 people in it. I don't know if you've caught this throughout the year, because I know that somebody's gonna say, well, sure, you can win that type of money because you could play high stakes and there's only 141 people, so it doesn't really count. Why aren't you playing smaller field tournaments? They're easier to win. There are less people in them. So all year we've been saying focus on 100 to 300 players in tournaments, right? Those are the tournaments you should kind of be attacking as a part of your daily spend, no matter if you're a high stakes player or a low stakes player. But looking at this lineup, and this is on a 3-game slate, so rules have to be broken, right? There's no way that you can have all the right rules. Like I've got Montgomery against the Lions defense. I've got 2 tight ends in this lineup, but I do have a Dak Prescott double stack with Wilson and Schultz. I brought it back with Renfro. I also had Ezekiel Elliott in there because I thought he made more sense than having Swift. I needed to cut out one super chalky running back and shave off about 20% of tournament here just to get down. And we're not going to stay under 130 because 1, it's a smaller field tournament. 2, it's high stakes, different game. But the philosophies kind of still remain the same, even on a 3-game slate as messy as Thanksgiving was. And if that game didn't go off, then you know what? I'm just not going to win. And that's okay. And you have to have that philosophy when you're playing tournaments because all the money is up top. All the money's in the top 5, in the top 10, right? And the escalators are massive. If you just sneak into the money, I think like $3,000 was the payout here. Contest details here. Okay. Contest details. First, 50K. Second, 25K. 15, 12, 10. And then like 20th to 27th, there's no pay jump. Then it jumps $500. It's a $1,500 entry fee tournament. Then it jumps another $500. So the first 16 spots, right? 17 spots are really only getting 1,000 difference between 11th and 27th. You got to get into that top 10. It's no different if you're playing larger field tournaments, and I do play larger field tournaments. You guys know that I max enter the Millionaire Maker and all the showdown slates as well. You have to have an aim of finishing in the top 10. Otherwise, it's not worth playing tournaments. It just isn't. What are some of my favorite mini stacks this week? What do you mean mini stacks? You mean secondary stacks? I don't mini stack. You find you're too chalky in your tournament bills. That helps. No worries. I've said this part for years. Do you want to know how to get different in tournaments? Like the easiest way to get different in tournaments? It's going to make you very upset. The easiest way to get different in tournaments is go over to whatever lineup builder you're using and click on the rating or click on the percentage played, right? They all have that P-own column or whatever, right? Click on that and draw a line through the first 2 or 3 guys at every position and don't use them. All of a sudden, your lineups are way more contrarian and they're not stupid, right? They're more contrarian without being dumb. You're not too far off the beaten path. And you're still playing really good players in really good matchups who have a lot of volume. Just eliminate a couple of guys from the list. And all of a sudden, and still build with those same philosophies. Stack, double stack, bring back, secondary stack, correlate your lineup, but do it without the top play. I can't not play Devontae Adams every week. That's fine. If you're playing a large field tournament, stay under 130 total percent. So if Devontae is going to be 30%, you have 100% to spend. Just like you have 50K in salary to spend, and you want to spend 8,500 of that on Devontae, now you have 41,000 left to spend on the rest of your lineup. You also have, with that 41 plus K, you have 100% total points to spend on the rest of that lineup and use correlation. You can use them as a one-off if you want. You can use them as part of a secondary stack if you'd like. Do I enter the same lineup in all my single entry contests? So my play has decreased greatly. Right? Not the quality of my play, but the quantity of my play. Instead of entering 400 games, 700 games a week, I'm entering one lineup in high stakes and 150 lineups, including that high stakes lineup, because I'm still using proper tournament building techniques and correlation into the Millionaire Maker. Do I think T-Law can bring value to QB? My thoughts is the Jags O-line. Look, how can I put this? Because I don't mean this to sound at all insulting, but I don't care who you play. So if you think that Trevor Lawrence, I care, one, that you think that this player can have a quarterback. You think a quarterback can have a 25 plus point day on DraftKings, right? That's part one. And I'm on board in agreeing with you that the way that they run offense in Jacksonville and allow him to challenge downfield with throws, that he can certainly have that day, and he provides enough value with his legs that he can certainly get there, right? He's done it once so far this year. Is a 22-point day here. If this game has like 55 to 60 total points and he throws for 3 touchdowns or is responsible for 3 touchdowns, let's say he completes 25 or more passes and has 25 plus DraftKings points. I don't care who you play. I do not think that Trevor Lawrence will be on a winning lineup in the Millionaire Maker by himself, right? I do think if you believe that Trevor Lawrence is that dude this week, that you need to find a couple of receivers to play with him, right? And find somebody on the other side to bring it back with. The rules are the same, only the names are changed, right? So if you think that he's going to have a big day, who's going to be on the other side of it? Do you think LaVisca finally steps into a role now because they got shredded by Debo last week, and now, you know, fake sharp Urban Meyer is going to say, oh, wow, we have a guy that can do some athletic things. We should use him that way. And Jamal Agnew's on IR. And so now there's a tighter list of people who could get targeted here. You know, are you going to play Dan Arnold coming off of a 0-0 week at lower percent? And then what you're doing with this is this combination of 2 pass catchers, maybe here, and then here, you know, or if he plays, right? That puts you in a different spot than everybody else. So it's never just about the quarterback. It's about everything else you do with that lineup. So if you think that a quarterback is going to be the guy that's going to lead you to the top of the mountain this weekend, you have to play other guys with him. Because if that quarterback has a 30-point day, there are receivers that got there too. And if that quarterback is not popular, his receivers are probably not popular too. And if all of that hits for you, you are way ahead of the field. We've already seen Heineke win a Millionaire Maker. We've seen Joe Flacco win the Smiz Gang League. We've seen Mike White win a Millionaire Maker, and none of them were played as one-offs. If you think that quarterback is going to have a big day, then so will his pass catchers. Goff won a Millionaire Maker, right? Like, stop worrying about trust, right? That's nails on a chalkboard to me when I hear people say that. Al, do you trust this guy this week? That doesn't matter, right? Trust has nothing to do with any of this when it comes to tournaments, right? Projectable volume has something to do with cash games, right? This player, if they avoid injury, is going to get X amount of carries, X amount of snaps, Y amount of touches, all those sort of, you know, this percentage of inside the 5 carries or end zone targets if they're a pass catcher. When it comes to tournaments, ain't about trust. Tournaments are about nothing but upside. And if you think that a guy is going to have the upside, especially a quarterback, then you've got to play the players that he is going to pull along with him if he has that sort of day. I know that's a really long answer, but that's why I like this show, particularly on Fridays, so that we can get into the long form and really talk about and flesh out all of these answers. It's never about just the quarterback. You know, I've said that forever. Yeah, but like, can he sustain a double stack? If you're playing him in tournaments, he better be able to sustain a double stack, because otherwise you shouldn't be playing him in tournaments. And he doesn't need to sustain them every week. And he doesn't need to projectably sustain a double stack. He just needs to do it on that one day. So if you want to play any quarterback on this slate, I don't care which one it is. You know? Just I don't care who you play. I don't care how you play them. So if you got a little itch that you got to scratch with a specific player in a tournament, go ahead, play him. Especially a quarterback. Just play him. Build your lineup the right way around them. No problem, default. Why does Minnesota double stacks get overlooked every freaking week? I don't know, man, but I love it. Like, I'll save y'all $25. I'm probably going to have 10 to 15% of Kirk Cousins stacks again this week. Again, every week. Literally every week, I have like 15% Kirk Cousins stacks. People don't play them. They just don't. They refuse. You know? Sneak preview of 5 under 5. Guess who's going to be on 5 under 5 again this week, chat? You know? YouTube, you know. It's basically 4 under 5. Because one of the spots is locked up every week for the same dude who people refuse to play every single week. Like Kirk Cousins? What did he do to you guys? 28 fantasy points, 31 fantasy points, 21 fantasy points, 28 fantasy points, 25 plus is my threshold for being able to carry a double stack. 2 touchdowns, 300 yards, 36 completions, 3 touchdowns, 22 completions, 3 touchdowns, 30 completions, 3 touchdowns, 33 completions, 3 touchdowns, 24 completions, 341 yards. Like, well, you know, in week 8, he didn't do it. He only had 13 points in week 8. So what? Nobody trusts Cousins. Yes. And I just spent like 10 minutes explaining to you why trust does not matter when it comes to tournaments. This right here is in play every freaking week. And these guys right here are under 5% in tournaments every single freaking week. Every single week. Hell, you need to get a little cheaper? Fine. There. Boom. You know, play one of them and play that. Right? Play one of them and play this double. You know? There. There. You know, Ayuk the last 2 or 3 weeks has seen 20% of the target market share in San Francisco. But anchor bias has people looking at this. Ayuk's still in the doghouse. You know, Shanahan doesn't like Ayuk. 7 targets, 8 targets, 4 targets. 19 fantasy points, 21 fantasy points. 5.3K. You think JT gets steamed this week? Sorry, I said steamed. I have no problem with the word steamed. My issue with the word steamed is that it's being like adopted industry-wide as though it's like a new term. It's not anywhere near a new term. Just nobody said it, now everybody's saying it. It's like the word of the year in daily fantasy. Nico Collins is showing up high in projections. Is he really a thing for value and salary relief? So, like, everybody is going to pop against the Jets. You know? That's facts. That's not a hot take. That's not news. That's not anything that, like, should surprise you. The Jets are just really bad, guys. The Jets are very bad on defense. They're not good. Here. Can I make this a little bigger? No, that takes it off the screen. There. No, thank you. The Jets are allowing 37.77 fantasy points to opposing running backs this season. The Seahawks are allowing 30. They allow 7 more points, 7.5 more fantasy points to opposing running backs than anybody else. So because of the way projections are done, it's gonna make running backs against the Jets pop. Now on the season, see, this is the season points allowed. This is the rotogrinders tool, by the way. Smizzle.tv/rotogrinders. This was a free tool. Anybody can go check this out. You go to NFL, all tools, and you scroll down to the bottom, and it's one of the tools near the bottom. So the Jets, let's see, against quarterbacks, where are they? Here. Okay. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14th on the year, allowing 18.46 points to opposing quarterbacks because they're usually playing from behind. But how about the last 4 weeks? Quarterbacks. Third most last 4 weeks. 20.98 fantasy points the last 4 weeks to opposing quarterbacks. Nico's a wide receiver. I know. I'm getting there. Let me get there. Last 4 weeks against wide receivers. New York Jets, third most DraftKings points. Not to bring in too much Wolf game here to the show. I know that this is the daily fantasy show. The NFT stuff is on the second channel and in a specific channel in Discord. But the Jets are bad. They're really bad. All across the board. They're terrible defensively. They're god awful. On the season, opposing wide receivers, DraftKings points. DraftKings wide receivers allowed season per game. On the season, less, right? Here's everybody. Here's the Jets. So wide receiver points against the Jets. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. Wide receiver points against the Jets are invariably tied to quarterback points against the Jets, which have skyrocketed in the past 4 weeks, as we showed before. So that's why quarterbacks and wide receivers against the Jets recently have been popping, as well as running backs, because the Jets suck against running backs the last 4 weeks and on the season, and now they're giving up more points to opposing quarterbacks because people are just throwing the ball in the first half against them. Is bad. It's really bad. Is Ty Johnson the lead running back this week? I'm not projecting him as the lead running back this week. I'm projecting him as James White plus. Is that kind of fair? So I'm not going to say that I think that he's the answer, he's the deal, you have to play him. You know, as I highlighted earlier on the show, there's a lot of running backs available this week. But Ty Johnson, even if he plays like 45 to 50% of the snaps, right? Tevin Coleman, I could always be wrong. I don't view Tevin Coleman as a 70-75% snap running back at this point in his career. He's 55 at best. So if he's 55 at best, that means that Ty Johnson is going to play 45% of the snaps. We've seen what happens in this offense when he gets a good volume of snaps right in this region right here. 3 targets, 6 targets, 7 targets, 3 targets, 8 targets. We also have the possibility that with a quarterback like Wilson, could just blow everything out of the water in terms of dump offs to running backs, because he has a gunslinger mentality and he's going to throw it, because while he's young and he makes terrible decisions, his entire life he has gotten where he's gotten by trusting his arm strength, and his ability to fit the ball through tight windows or fire the ball downfield, where the other quarterbacks that have played for the Jets, Johnson, White, Flacco, have, you know, different skill sets, let's say, than Zach Wilson does at this point of their careers and his, and they're more apt to take what is there, and what has been there has been dump offs to running backs, because the Jets don't have wide receivers You know, the Jets just don't have a wide receiver room outside of Elijah Moore, who, by the way, Elijah Moore playing great, but also getting the usage that you want, the underlyings, right? Where he's playing 80% of snaps. He's running routes a ton. He's getting targeted a massive amount of targets over the last 3, 4, 5 weeks, right? 6 targets against New England, 6 against Cincinnati, 8 against Indy, 6 against Buffalo, 11 against Miami. He's getting targeted in spots where he can catch the ball easily. He's getting targeted downfield. They're not all, it's kind of like the Deontay Johnson target model where it's like dink, 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 fire one deep. Dink, 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 fire one deep. So like his ADOT overall is low, which gives him that high catch floor on a lot of targets, but also has that big play upside, whether it's on a screenplay, because he definitely has that ability to take a short one and take it deep, but a 20-yard catch or more in each of the last 4 games and 4 touchdowns over the last 4 as well. So like there's things that can happen with Moore that aren't going to happen with Corey Davis or Crowder or Cole Sr. We spoke all offseason, no disrespect to anybody who plays in the NFL, because anybody who plays in the NFL is not just a guy versus general population, but like their entire receiving core outside of Moore are they're a bunch of dudes. There's none of them that really stand out, that have the ability to get tremendous separation consistently from top targets. None of them are alpha wide receivers. And to me, that includes Elijah Moore. He's getting treated like an alpha right now, but they're going to have to add somebody to this offense for it to really take off over the next couple of years to where they want it to go with Wilson and Moore and Carter. They're going to have to add a lead dog wide receiver to be the guy on that offense. O-line is suboptimal. I mean, everything starts there, right? Always add O-line. Would I use Ty Johnson or Nico Collins for salary? What is Collins' salary? Off the top of my head, I can't. Collins is $3,200. I mean, he's way cheaper. And wide receivers just have so much more upside. Right? Johnson's fine. But like $4,300 versus $3,200. What define failure for Nico Collins? Is kind of what I'm saying. Like, define failure, and also you get the possibility of playing 4 wide receivers. He's cheap for a reason. I agree. I mean, Cooks would probably be my favorite guy to play there, you know, out of all of the Houston players. But like, Collins is fine. I'm sure that there's going to be more value that pops on this slate, because there just always is, guys. That's the way things go in 2020 and 2021 in daily fantasy. But like, Brandon Cooks is easily my favorite play out of Houston at like 5,800. And then most of the value, as we've seen this year at wide receiver, lies between 4,000 and 6,000. That's where your value guys are. And then every once in a while we get somebody who's going to play a lot of snaps at sub 4K and get 6 or 7 targets. But this is kind of a dry slate. One, with it being a little bit less people, less teams on the slate. And then the other one, there's so many games that are pick'ems and not a lot of really high totals for us to go after. Projections like Cooks. Projections are always going to like Cooks. That's just the way that it always goes. But they like him more this week. Projections like Cooks a lot because he always has got to project to get a certain amount of the target market share there, right? So like when you say, okay, well, Houston's going to throw it this many times, and they're going to throw it more and more efficiently with Tyrod than they were with Mills Mafia, and they're playing against a defense that's going to give up a ton of an efficiency bump, let's say, right? Like, look at this target tree. Houston, like, it's Brandon Cooks and it's nothing. 89 targets, 33.5% of the target market share. And now he gets an efficiency bump on 2 ends. He gets an efficiency bump because of Tyrod being the quarterback. Tyrod is a better quarterback than anything else that they've run out there this year. And he gets an efficiency bump based on how bad that Jets defense is. Like, Brandon Cooks is probably going to be the chalk cash game wide receiver this week. He's going to be in a lot of cash game lineups. because you could just make it work. You wish Carter didn't get hurt? Me too. Carter was really starting to come into his own. Hunt and Conklin coming back. Good for Brown's run game. What? Kareem Hunt? I mean, the Browns have one of the best run games in the league. That offensive line is great and creates so much efficiency for anybody who's running behind it. So, like, Hunt doesn't make that running game. The offensive line makes that running game. Everybody that's run behind that line this year has had great weeks. Elijah Mitchell's high in projection. What's his deal? Is he a good play? I mean, whoever gets the lion's share of the snaps for San Francisco is going to be good. However, the best play on San Francisco is one of those wide receivers, and it's very possibly Debo. Because Debo's getting this ridiculous market share of targets, which I said was going to come down. Remember a couple weeks ago, it's like there's no way he's going to sustain the amount of targets that he's been getting, right? Because 49ers targets, right? This is absurd. He was at like 34%. It's come down. He's probably going to end the season somewhere around 28 or 27 because they saw the return of George Kittle, and Brandon Ayuk is now out of the doghouse and has seen over 20% of targets the last few weeks. And Kittle's going to see about 20% of targets, and he's probably going to see about 25. Right? The difference is Debo, if I can find the thing I was using, I've completely lost it. Debo is now getting 13 rushing attempts over the last 2 games, including work inside the 10-yard line. Right? He has become an alpha wide receiver being utilized as a Swiss Army knife once they get near the goal line. They are simply finding inventive ways to get the ball into Debo's hands, and he's got a play designer and play caller who is very creative. You know, Shanahan has always been very creative and able to get the ball into his best players' hands more often than some other coaches can do that, right? It hurts Debo if Mitchell's back, wouldn't I think? Not really. Did it hurt him in here? Mitchell was there here. That didn't hurt him. What's going to hurt Debo is Kittle and Ayuk getting greater than 15% of the target market share. These two guys getting more targets is what's going to take down Debo's projectability, right? So like Ayuk the last couple of weeks, 7, 4, 8. Taking a look over at George Kittle, the last few weeks, he finally came back to be healthy, right? Hadn't played. 10 targets, 9 targets earlier in the season. Then he came back, 8 targets, 7 targets, 4 targets. It's different when there's nobody else to throw to. When they refuse to throw it to Ayuk and they don't have the option to throw it to Kittle, more targets get funneled towards Debo. Now that both of these hyper talented pass catchers who can get a good amount of separation are both on the field in addition to Debo, and well, one was off the field, one was on it, but the one that was on it wasn't getting utilized. Now he is. Debo's going to see a lot more peaks and valleys for the last 5-6 weeks of the season than he did before. With Mitchell back, the 49ers will go back to 90% running plays. They never ran the ball 90% of the time. The worst thing for us, if you're playing any 49ers, the worst thing is if the 49ers play from ahead, because yeah, they will slow it down in the second halves. They will do what it takes to win. But if they're down 4, they can't just do that. You know, run it a lot is like 53, 54%. That's a lot. Javonte Williams or Melvin Gordon, we're going to have to wait for Friday injury reports. Like, I didn't even look at anything yesterday because, I mean, I watched the football games, but I wasn't like grinding news or sitting there at my computer with TweetDeck open. So I don't really have answers, for everything like I normally do. And I'm like, Thursday is a big day for me to watch Thursday practice reports and all those things. Have I ever used a double bring back and a double stack? Not as much recently. If I'm going to use a double bring back, it's going to be with a primary single stack, right? And that is very rare for me. I think I've done that with one player, maybe two players this season. And it was a situation where I wanted to get access to Kelsey and Hill. And so I played the quarterback and one pass catcher from the other team to get me exposure to that game and warrant having two players on the other side. And you can also do that as a secondary stack with single and double, because when the quarterback's expensive, the band of scoring at quarterback is just not all that wide, right? It's just not. There's the difference between the number one scoring quarterback on 99% of weeks. The number one guy and the number 10 guy is 6 points. The difference between the number one running back and the number 10 running back can be 15 or 25 points. Hell, the difference between the number one running back and the number two running back last week was 20 points. So there's much bigger difference between the position players, running back, wide receiver specifically, sometimes tight end, but tight ends typically don't have 40-point days. Like Kelsey was doing it last year, but he's not doing that this year. If a tight end has like 20 plus fantasy points, it's a big day. And then most tight ends end up in this sub 10 point range. So like you can get a 10 to a 15 point difference between the number one tight end and the 10th most tight end or the 5th most tight end. And at wide receiver, you're talking like, look at Cooper Kupp's weeks this season, 26, 20, 30, 40, 37. The 10th highest wide receiver on those days probably has like 22 or 23 fantasy points. It's a massive difference. It separates you from the field if you hit on that pass catcher. But it doesn't always separate you from the field if you hit on the quarterback. Jalen Hurts is the number one quarterback in fantasy right now on the season. He has no games over 31 fantasy points. He's the QB1. In season long. DraftKings with bonuses and everything, you got Brady up top and Herbert up top, right? So like he gets you that 300-yard bonus. He's averaging the 300-yard bonus pretty much every game, right? So like multiple touchdowns in every game except two. Let's give him multiple touchdowns here because he ran one in, right? Multiple passing touchdowns in every game plus except two. Gets you the 300-yard bonus way more often than he doesn't get you the 300-yard bonus. So like, and even with all that, 1 game with 40, no other game over 32 points. You can find quarterbacks that get you 24 to 26 fantasy points pretty much every week. 4,400 way too cheap for Gronk this week. It's cheap. I'm not going to lie to you. It's definitely cheap. Jalen Hurts cash lock rest of season? No, because his price is way up now. When he was 6,000 to 6,500, I was less interested. I was way more interested than I am at him at like 7,300. Realize we didn't do any polls. Yeah, I didn't know if I had the mods here, and I didn't know if polls were working today. And I don't think sites have most sites don't have percentages out yet either. So like knowing who the most played, unless we just sort by rating or something like that. Like there's just not, I don't know. I feel like Joe Mixon's not going to be as played as he should be either this week. It's a smaller slate. I highlighted how much value there is. I feel like he's going to be maybe 10% or 15% lower than he should be. I don't think he's going to be sub 5. I don't think he ends up there. But his volume has been way too good to ignore. Scotty Miller is back. Is he viable? Define viable. For cash? Hell no. If I'm playing a 50-50, I want no part of Scotty Miller. It looks like Mixon's one of the only ones at the top tier that can make value. Hello? He's good. He can always make value. He makes value on volume without touchdowns. With prices being so inflated on DraftKings, could cash lineups go towards stars and scrubs? Stars and scrubs has not really been a thing on DraftKings football this year. Basketball, most definitely. Basketball as a DFS sport lends itself towards stars and scrubs. DraftKings has done a very good job this year of pricing the wide receivers up to a point where stars and scrubs has not been as viable as it has been in past years. It used to be like every week there were 2 or 3 plays under 4K that were going to get 7 targets. That has not really existed this season. They've done a good job of pricing up the floor wide receivers. They've also done a really good job of pricing up the floor of the running backs in general. So the cheapest running back is 4K, not 3K. And they've been aggressive at pricing up a lot of the running backs so that they've at the lower end, right? But the right answer has typically been play a lot of mid-range, 4 to 6K guys, fit in one stud where you can, somebody who's going to catch a lot of passes, and you win in cash. Cash this year has been surprisingly straightforward. More weeks than it has not been straight. I think there were 2 weeks where it was somewhat confusing, but most weeks the cash game lineup was very simple and straightforward by Sunday morning. Mostly because COVID is helping with that. Where like players are just not making it, which is creating a ton of value, and then you just jump on the value, guys. Like there's a lot of plays this week. I think that cash game lineup is going to center around those sub 6K running backs, at least 2 of them. People are going to play one of probably Devontae Adams over Cup because Devontae Adams is cheaper than Cup by like 1,000 and save that money for something else. But like it is what it is. Tournaments, you should still be building the same way. Focus on your correlation, focus on your stacks, your secondary stacks, and make good decisions. But the biggest takeaway that I want you guys to have from this video this week is I don't care who you play, I care how you play them. We've been saying that all year long. If there is a quarterback that nobody is talking about, right? Like that's always the saying, right? Nobody's talking about this quarterback. Okay, well, if you want to play that quarterback, play him. Just be sure that if you think he's going to have a 25+ point day in tournaments, that you are double stacking him, using somebody from the other team to kind of hope that game shoots out and shoot for the top, 10 or 20 in those large field tournaments. It's the only way you're going to make money. Don't be afraid to not cash, because if all you're trying to do is sneak into the min cash area, you're just going to end up a losing player over time. You've got to get up into the top 10. We try to outline the ways for you guys to do it. So thank you guys for watching. Good luck this weekend. Hopefully you had a fantastic Thanksgiving. And thank you guys very much for all the work on the charity. We hit 25,000 and we're shooting for 35,000 now. So appreciate you guys, and look for another video right there.
He's a legend.